So
Science of
segueing
when.
from there into the science of when, the author Jonah Berger says the right mix of sources can provide more proof, but it's also important to understand when exposure to these sources will have the most impact.
Mm.
Yeah, I think to me, this subheading is really hard to apply because you have to the knowing when is hard. It's like you're trying to find the perfect time to help someone or give advice. I don't think there
I
is a
thought the same thing.
yeah. I was like, I don't think. Again, I'm not saying he's wrong or whatever, but it's more the fact that I don't think you can identify that like how he's mentioning. You just have to kind of shoot and have a target, and if you miss, you have to kind of take it back and figure out what your strategy was and how to improve that strategy on moving forward. And then
You know, I took it as I know you can relate to this, Devin, is that, even with trading stocks, you can look at charts and you can try to identify when the right time to buy is or do something, right? But it's never perfect.
Yeah.
Everyone, you can ask a person who's a pro and he'll tell you it's never the perfect time.
What?
It's a little bit of a gut feeling. You kind of read what's going on and you got to make a gut decision about it,
Maybe there's not they're not aiming for like a perfect time. I think there's the point of this book is just to point out that there's more strategic areas than another or time to do something. Because what you just said, stocks, right? Yeah, there's never going to be a perfect time, but you definitely want to buy at a certain time, right? You don't want to buy at
like you could by looking at the chart and trying to read the situation, but you don't know what's going to happen. Like, it's an estimated guess is what I'm getting at. And even with trying to give someone advice, trying to help somebody, you're giving your best shot when you see someone at their lowest, right? You're like, okay, they really need help. I need to fucking pull them up by their bootstraps and really try to help them. But bro, the dip could keep dipping. They could go lower. You know what I'm saying?
True.
So
I think the gray areas that we're comparing it to stocks, but I think in a sense there is a good time to buy, or there's a good time or a better time maybe to apply some of the things in the book that's being talked about, like corroborating evidence. There's probably a better time to sort of concentrate that in one area versus another time per se.
yeah.
Sure.
I mean, think about your life. What example could you relate to? And you don't have to answer, but maybe think about something internally when someone said something at the right time, and maybe it stuck with you because it was the right time and you needed to hear that at that time in your life, versus someone saying the same thing years ago and it didn't really hit right with you.
Yeah, it's kind of spread out.
Yeah,
He mentions like it's usually spread out. Like addiction researchers note that even when multiple friends and family members try to get an addict to change, their efforts are usually spread out. It's not just one perfect time. It's usually over a period of time, and it's
Correct.
coming from different sources. So I think, I don't know. I don't know. Maybe if I reread the chapter, but I couldn't really identify if there was a perfect time or if there's like, when you see it, how do you know when things are going bad to where you should say something? Again, it's all subjective. You just step in when you believe it's right to step in.
Well, I'm thinking of the example of when in my previous relationship, bad one. I mean, we all know, we talked about it. That was evidence, right? That was corroborating evidence over a span of years.
Yeah.
And there wasn't a perfect time to tell me at the time of what was happening, but yeah, I think that's a great example because I did take it, over a span of years. So it's interesting.
So going off of that, to jumping off of what David just said, because I want to touch in on that, which is when to concentrate or spread out scarce resources with the sprinkler analogy. So you had just mentioned you have been hearing this sprinkled out for a long period of time, and it really didn't change you. Me personally as a person, the whole spreading out thing doesn't work with me. I think I'm pretty strong-headed myself. I need the fire hose. I need all of it aimed at me to get through. Maybe if someone would have fire hosed you, maybe you would have made a decision easier. But they kept trying to put out a flame with a sprinkler for 10 years or whatever. I just said 10 years. I don't know how long you guys stand for.
Yeah,
but,
I feel you though, because the only way I actually
David, this is what's going on.
Yeah, and he talks about that. Jonah Berger talks about that. The concentration usually is when shit happens and when shit hits the fan, when there's a lot of corroborating evidence and a large concentration to do something. That's initially what made me, end a really bad relationship, because that fire hose came and I was like, oh shit, this is the reality,
Yeah. So if someone wants to give, if someone has a good analogy example of what the fire hose and the sprinkler actually mean, to what Jonah Berger's referencing when he says when to concentrate or spread out scarce resources, and how that can impact or have influence over someone. So if someone has a good example from the book, what the fire hose or the sprinklers are, then kind of give the audience like what, because people don't know what the sprinklers and the fire hose is.
True.
Well, what's the main difference between the two?
The concentration.
So I would say for the listeners, it's the delivery. Is it more spread out over time that you're trying to move someone's quote unquote boulder or their strong opinion, or is it more lightly spread out? It's maybe one big push every so often. Is that a good example or no?
An example is, let's see, I have a friend dealing with a weight problem, right? And it's health concerning, not a physique thing, okay? It's one thing if you kind of mention it in passing in social settings. Hey, man, maybe have you ever thought about doing this or that? Have you thought about working out? Have you thought about a diet? And it doesn't really hit because you guys are out. You're with your friends. It was just a very slight topic of a conversation. And it kept moving. That's a sprinkler, right? And you might do that for a couple years. A fire hose would be, I'm a big one-on-one guy, and I'd like to talk to people. Sit them down, me and him are talking, away from people, just us. And I'd be like, listen, what's going on? I think your health is concerning right now. That'd be a fire hose. I'm concentrating all my time to him and to this conversation for hopefully it'll hit something, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep. Mm-hmm.
So that's how I look at it.
Oh, damn,
I would say a sprinkler would be light touches, right? Like your friend that has health problems, weight-wise, it'd be like, hey, man, have you gained weight since the last time I seen you? That'd be like one sprinkler. Next time you see them, be like, hey, man, you're looking like you're getting bigger. These are sprinkler effects towards these attitudes, right? Where the fire hose might be a well thought out and formulated conversation or debate, right? Where you're like, your health is concerning, you weigh this much, this is what can happen, here's what you can do, here's how I'll help. A fire hose would be blasting that fire with a well thought out, well developed argument.
What the fuck?
Blast that shit. Oh boy.
John's eyes just rolled in the back of his head, bro.
I'm about to blast this shit up, boy.
And kind of at the beginning of this, we were talking about how do you identify that perfect moment when to, place your to make the most impact, when the perfect moment, right? And I don't really quite think that that subsection was more about let's identify the perfect moment. I think, if you were to have somebody with substance abuse, they just hit rock bottom, then you come at them with a fire hose attack, then that's a really good golden point to maybe cause and catalyze change. But I think it was more about frequency, right? And I think it was more about frequency because right on page 197, it says, but beyond how many invitations people received, when they received those invitations also mattered. The closer the different invitations were in time, the bigger their collective impact. And so the frequency of those things. So if I talk to you about your weight once every 6 months, okay, that's something I'll hear every 6 months. I could just brush it off. But if I tell you about it 3 times a week for 6 months, then it's going to be like, all right, I'm kind of getting annoyed by this. Maybe he has a point.
Yeah.
Right. More of a fire hose, not like the sprinkler.
Right. Or the sprinkler's going 3 times a day. You know what I mean? And you're just drenching it.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And in order to really change people's minds and catalyze, which I think is like a great word for what we're talking about, catalyzing change, is that you got to sort of know their boulders and their pebbles too. Know where they are, know their strong opinions, know their weaker opinions. How can you determine, should I be a fire hose right now or should I be a sprinkler?
Yeah. So referencing or kind of giving the example that Jonah Berger gave was, say a politician's running for a city mayor, or not even, just say a larger government official is running and they're trying to attack a large population, the fire hose method would be they're going to attack 10 different states and be word of mouth, be advertising. They don't know if it's going to hit directly to specific people, but they're spreading it out as far as possible just to get the information out. A fire hose would be that person specifying on one state for a period of time until they have that state conquered or people know about their message, they get the point across, then they move to a next state. It's one by one rather than spreading it out at one time and trying to hit everybody and then not knowing exactly how it impacted everybody. Not saying one or the other is better. There's different ways to approach it, but that's sort of the example that Jonah Berger gave for the sprinkler and the fire hose.
Okay, I liked how Devin brought up a different example. It's not a one-on-one, it's a group setting. Another example would be back to the office place. If you're trying to change maybe some culture or how things are operating, do you try to kind of get everyone going at the same time, or do you focus on one person, get someone on your side, and then now through their word of mouth, they're helping your cause, right?
Yeah.
And it's like one at a time, and eventually that one at a time, they're talking to someone. So it's a catalyst.
Yeah.
You know, it's a domino effect.
Yeah.
Instead of trying to talk to 50 people at once, you talk to one and get them to change to your side.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally.